Good morning and welcome to Northwest Unitarian Universalist Church.
Hello, today I'd like to light the chalice. Across the distance, the light from within me shines, sending love to all. Across the distance, your light is fuel that warms me and helps to keep my own light burning. Together, we keep the flame of community burning bright. Namaste.
Our readings this morning are posted on the UUA's worship web, which gives member congregations the right to use and record them. Our opening words today were written by Reverend Scott Taylor. We gather as a house of stories. As we learn from those who have gone before, the way in front of us becomes more clear. As we weave together the tales of who we are, our loneliness lessens, and the web of our oneness is revealed. As we listen deeply in those times of tender trust, we descend into the longings and learnings, hopes and fears of the humanity we share. Beneath the wells from which we drink, there is a deeper well that feeds them all. Come, let us tell each other our stories of thirst. Let us drink from the stories that sustain us all. Our first hymn, For All That Is Our Life, is sung by Jess Huteman.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are
This morning's reading was written by Star Austin, but Star is sick and unable to read it, so I'm filling in for her. I love Marvel movies. DC too. There is something about superheroes. The capes, the masks, the superpowers. I love it all. What I love the most is they help people. Sometimes they help people even when they aren't wearing a cape. One of our superheroes, Batman, well, Ben Affleck anyway, was recently on a famous talk show when the host said some unkind things about Muslims. Ben Affleck spoke up and told him that wasn't okay. So even when you don't have a cape on, you can be a hero and a helper. Do you know any helpers who don't wear capes? Sure. Police, firemen, ministers, parents, social workers, teachers. There are lots of helpers in the world. People who go into the helping professions have a great purpose in our society. When there is chaos and crisis, our helpers keep us calm and guide us to safety. Does anyone remember the show Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood? Mr. Rogers was a gentleman who had a children's television show on the public broadcasting station for over 30 years. He was a man who knew his purpose. He spent a lifetime speaking up for children, for their safety, education, and the right to a full and creative childhood. Mr. Rogers once said that as a boy, he saw something scary on the news. He was frightened, but his mother told him to look for the helpers. She pointed out the paramedics, police, and firemen who were helping the situation. And he realized that no matter how scary things get, there are always helpers among us. Not everyone who helps wears a cape or a uniform. In our own way, every one of us is a helper. Finding our purpose guides us to figure out what kind of helper we will be. Some of us help the environment. Others help with access to affordable housing. Some help people understand their finances or navigate tricky court situations. The helpers are all around us. When we don't look for helpers, we can feel overwhelmed. When I was growing up, Mr. Rogers was my helper. On his show, he would enter his house and change his sport coat into a comfy cardigan and his dress shoes to sneakers, and sit on the couch and talk to me as though I were right there with him. It felt like he was making time for me, even though he was coming through the television set. He was a stable presence in my life. I think he provided more help for kids than he ever knew. Mr. Rogers talked about bullying long before it was an unfortunate familiar phrase in our homes. He used make-believe to demonstrate the kinds of meanness that can occur between people when they are afraid or they themselves are feeling bad about who they are. Mr. Rogers also taught our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of each person. He showed us that every person was important, even people who were sometimes mean. Mr. Rogers never wore a cape. He was just a man following his purpose, making television programs for kids that taught his values. In simply pursuing what he loved, he taught millions of us that we are special simply by being who we are in the world. He taught us, no matter how scary things it might be, there are always helpers, so look for the helpers. I wonder if we lived purposefully, how many people we would help.
Can you think of an individual who had a tremendous impact on you and possibly even changed the trajectory of your life? Imagine what we would learn if we could all hear each other's stories about those people who played such pivotal roles in our lives. When I was planning this service, I kept hearing the hymn, "Come Sing a Song with Me," playing in my mind. And I kept thinking that it really needs to be, "Come share a story with me that I might know your mind." It seems that that's more to the point than hearing a song or walking in the rain, even though I do love that hymn. This month's theme made me think about why stories are such an important part of knowing each other. According to neuroscientists who study the role of story in our lives, it's far more than the information we learn. They have a biology-based explanation. When listeners connect to the experience of characters in a story, whether true or fictional, their brains release oxytocin, sometimes called the connection or the love hormone. Dr. Paul Zak refers to it as the moral molecule because when the brain synthesizes it, an individual becomes more trustworthy, generous, charitable, and compassionate. Listening to a good story also activates our neural mirroring. What that means is that our brains respond to what is happening in the story by connecting it with the time when we had similar feelings. When we get to that mental, yes, I know what that's like moment, even whether we don't recognize it, we feel more connected and less lonely. Dr. Zak describes the neural impact of storytelling as a mechanism that keeps us safe because it allows us to rapidly determine whether the people around us are angry or kind, dangerous or safe, friend or foe. It also allows us to rapidly form relationships with a wider set of members of our species than any other animal. No animal, colony, band, gaggle, school, or troop can be as large as a human community. And I will note here that it is unlikely that animals could maintain their sense of community over Zoom. Dr. Zak wrote, the ability to quickly form relationships allows humans to engage in the kinds of large-scale cooperation that builds massive bridges and sends humans into space. By knowing someone's story, where they come from, what they do, and who you might know in common, relationships with strangers are formed. Every Sunday, when we listen to each other in joys and sorrows or breakout rooms, we are building our community and deepening our connections with each other and making our world a better place. Next, Alex is going to play a musical interlude. Then Orlando will share his story. And Alex will play another interlude and we will hear from Nicole.
Good morning, Northwest UU family. Rita Pearson said that every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be. And that was my 11th grade Cass Technical High School history teacher, Mr. Wendell Davis. Mr. Davis did what Ben Franklin said. Tell me and I forget. Teach me and I remember. Involve me and I learn. Mr. Davis brought his three-dimensional unity approach to the classroom, in which he showed us how to relate history to politics, media, current events, and culture, and how to use our ethnicity, in this case, my Blackness, to benefit society. Through specially designed teaching boards, classroom debate and discussion, student research reports, and performance, we thought we were the United Nations. We would begin our class every day by reciting, "We the people agree to give nothing than respect to each other and to believe in the equal creation of us all. I benefited when Mr. Davis took us on a tour of Wayne State University and when he would let us host the annual Black History program. He showed us how racism plays itself in various ways and how to examine that principle. The confidence I received in learning principles that, for instance, the Middle East isn't a separate region, but is part of Africa, and how maps were made to make it seem separate from the continent for many obvious reasons. He empowered me to see that life is a collection of journeys and to take these ventures and take them valiantly. These adventures would span an entire lifetime. You know, each career path I have chosen, I have taken these classroom to life perspectives, from the newsroom to technical support services, the firehouse, to public relation meetings and government offices. What Joseph Addison said is true. What sculpture is to a block of marble, education is to the human soul. Thank you, Mr. D, for inspiring me to live, learn, and love.
Good morning. World religion professor Bill Seacrest at Henry Ford College was the person who came to mind for having a significant positive impact on my life. I was raised Ukrainian Byzantine Catholic with religion and spirituality at the core of family life. My early childhood ambitions were to become a nun or maybe a saint. I had conversations with God and read the Bible often. When I turned 18, I took on a second job, finally got my driver's license and a car, and began my first semester at Henry Ford College. One class was Introduction to World Religions, taught by Professor Bill Seacrest. What I learned from him ultimately brought me to Northwest UU 30 years later. Bill was dynamic and engaging as a teacher. He presented all religions equally and without bias. Every morning, he drove over 30 miles from Ann Arbor and stepped into the classroom with a wool-brimmed hat, a large satchel, and a chill attitude. He wore Birkenstock sandals with socks year-round, no matter how rainy, snowy, or slushy the weather. That his feet never seemed to get wet added to the magic of his persona. A few times, when students got to class before Bill, we had colorful discussions trying to figure out his religion. I wagered likely Buddhist or possibly Hindu. When he premiered an experiential course, The Varieties of Religious Experience, I grabbed a seat. Bill expanded my perspective of global humanity and faith through the timeline of all human history. He introduced me to Joseph Campbell and how mythology connected religions to one another, revealing their commonalities more than their differences. Not only was he an encyclopedia of religions, but he immersed us in learning experiences. We visited the Holocaust Memorial Center, a Zen Buddhist temple, and many interfaith presentations. Once I showed up for an event in a packed ballroom. Bill looked up and saw my overwhelm. He invited me to sit at his table, pointing to an empty chair, and he assured me I had a place there. After I caught my breath, I realized the speaker we were all there to see was at our table. His kindness made an impression. While Bill didn't reveal his religion, he was a vocal environmental advocate. When I co-founded the Earth Club during my first semester, he joined as faculty. Bill is now retired and serves as director of Southeast Michigan Land Conservancy. This year, an 80-acre parcel of land was named the Seacrest Nature Preserve in Superior Township. Bill and his family have advocated for that area for decades, including his parents who are now deceased, his siblings, and his wife. That land will connect to 2,800 protective acres for wildlife and public recreation. Bill is currently director of Still Point Zen Buddhist Temple in Detroit. He practices Buddhism, but does not call himself a Buddhist. He has also practiced Christianity, Catholicism, Hinduism, and yoga, claiming they have all influenced his life. His early career included teaching at a Catholic school where my cousins remember him jumping up on his desk. In February of 2015, he led a group of 12-year-olds from Troy in meditation. I'll end with his own words from that day. I consider religion, if properly understood, to be wisdom traditions. But human beings have a tendency to look for shortcuts or don't have access to accurate information, and religions can become terribly abusive. A lot of people are skeptical or repudiate religion because of atrocities committed in the name of religion all over the world every day. But the other side of the coin is wonderful. Random acts of kindness and beauty are also done in the name of religion. It is not the religion, but what kind of person you are, and if you are using your religion in a wise manner, it can open up potential. Thank you.
Our next hymn is Spirit of Life, number 123.
Spirit of life, come unto me, sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion, blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Thank you to the 4 people who created that piece of music. We've missed our choir. It's wonderful to hear a quartet. So now our reading will be Wooed into This World by Reverend Scott Taylor, also from the UUA Worship Web. Who dreamed you into being? What stories sat in their heart as they imagined what you would become? Who helped you imagine your story? Who helped you see your place in the world and what matters most? Who helped you understand that you could be the author of your own unfolding? All of which is a way of asking, who listened? Who listened until you could speak for yourself? Until you trusted the voice that is your own? And what about the stories of others? Those kept in cramped spaces of silence for fear of how hard and narrow this world of ours can be. Who needs your listening so their story can be set free? Whose story needs held in your heart so it knows it is worth entering into the world? We say it is about listening, but really it's about love. It is through affection that our stories are born. They are wooed into this world. Never forget that, nor this. It is through loving the stories that we discover they love us back. Amen. We leave this time of worship holding on to our connection with each other until we are gathered again.